guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and this is part 2 of my podcast interview with BJA member GreaseMonkey. If you don't know GreaseMonkey, he is someone that you could spend hours talking with about advantage play or life or maybe even Marie Kondo. So while he's not out there grinding at the tables every day, you're definitely going to enjoy hearing his take on advantage play and life and some of the intersection of those things. I had a blast talking with him, and I hope you guys enjoy part 2 of our podcast interview. Awesome. Well, let's get into this. You're calling it 5 from the forum, which was a great idea. And there were a lot of good questions on there, and too many for us to, many more than 5. And so what I decided to do is take this a direction, and I kind of separated them in my mind. There are things that are like bigger than blackjack, and those are the ones we're going to focus on. I picked five of those, and then the other ones that were also really good, I'm just going to do a different podcast and just maybe I'll ask another AP to hop on with me, but answer these questions that are a little bit more tactical or strategic just to blackjack at the tables. So with that being said, the first one is from Just Dan, who asked, what's your greatest regret relating to your AP career?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I obviously don't know what you were going to ask, but I did take a quick peek, beforehand. And I remember thinking, oh God, I bet Colin's going to ask me Just Dan's question. Just Dan, by the way, also is phenomenal on the forum, and was really influential. Yeah, and his podcast. And I've never met him in person, but Just Dan, you are somebody that I read religiously when I was first starting. So thank you for that.
I've never met him either, and I'm not sure if he really exists. But
really,
it might be Nichols' second account, or no, I don't.
Because we never see Nichols and Just Dan at the same time, right? So it's probably that. Right. What's my biggest regret? I mean, for me, what I wish is that I had another 100 hours that I could have played. That's not really the same as what's my regret. But I wish I could have done this for another 100 hours. I regret if I ever, let down my, family, or if there was ever any resentment from my wife, or my kids for them getting sick because I got sick at a casino. Well, I certainly regret that. And then, of course, I regret it because if I didn't get them sick, I'd probably still be playing because I wouldn't have had this realization that this is not in alignment. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like when I went to play, I was prepared. I felt like I didn't do it too early. I felt like I gave it my total attention when I was at the table. I felt like I was disciplined in that if I dropped a count, I would stop playing in the shoe. So I don't know if I have any regret outside of maybe those like emotional ones. So I'm sorry to let you down, Just Dan, in my answer.
And I'm not going to answer that one because I think I did an entire podcast about that, and a video. I don't know. But I think I had a list of them, at least five regrets or something like that. So people can check that out if they want my answer. So moving on, and this one we might spend kind of a considerable amount of time on if that's all right, because I think this is a really important question, and I kind of merged a couple of people's questions, so we'll just get into it. But MPS, kind of, and Nichols were asking about how can card counting impact mental health? What can card counters do to protect their mental health? What danger signs should card counters seek to be aware of? And if observed, how should they work to counter? So yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this, and then I can get into my thoughts too.
Sure. I mean, it could go in a lot of directions. I mean, I'll tell you, I'd been around addicts my entire life. So I'm certainly like aware of what addictive behavior looks like. And at a high level, I'd say, or at the most obvious black and white level, if you're not doing a good job at your job because you're gambling, or card counting, or if you're not spending time with family members, and they're making you aware of the fact that you are being negligent. You probably have a problem. I mean, you could go to Gamblers Anonymous and go through that, 10 or 15 questions. And I think it's actually a really smart thing to do. Self-reflection is not bad. I would say this personally, my personal experience, and it's something that I didn't like about card counting, is that the lens through which I was living life altered slightly, where I was just thinking about it a lot, which means I wasn't thinking about other things. Like I wasn't thinking about other creative things or maybe something I could do for something else. I would say that, if you're driving in a car and you're using your headlights, well, the headlight beam was narrowing. And so what I was seeing and where the headlights were pointed were probably a little bit too focused on blackjack. Which means that I didn't have room for other things or other opportunities. That almost probably sounds a little too drastic, but maybe the best way to say it is like, if you're grocery shopping, you should be thinking about grocery shopping. If you're watching a movie, you should be watching the movie. And I would say that, I was probably watching a movie, but still kind of in the back of my head, going through deviations or whatever. And so there were times where it was taking me out of the present moment.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's not how I want to live my life. I want to live my life in the present moment. So does that help? Or is that?
Yeah. That to me, what that actually reminds me of is there was a season, I think our first couple of kids were really pretty young. And my wife, Grace, is like, hey, you're always like checking email or whatever, like in the evening. And it had nothing to do with blackjack. It was just like a sign of workaholism, like a sign that I couldn't shut it off or I didn't want to shut it off. So I don't know. I made some rules, like I don't check email after 5 o'clock or something like that or whatever. And sometimes it's not always that easy. It's like, oh yeah, I'm doing way better not checking email. And then other times I'm, checking more. And that can be a good indication of like, oh, well, what else is going on? Am I like stressed out? And so I'm medicating by whatever, checking email or social media or whatever that thing is. But like workaholism as a card counter can absolutely be a thing, or just using it as a distraction. I actually threw this. I have my own thoughts, but I threw this out to RX Gamble, who I respect a lot. I played professionally for a few years and then ran teams for twice as long as that, like 6 or 7 years, and then worked on Blackjack Apprenticeship. So at this point, I feel like more of a wannabe than RX Gamble, who's like made a living playing that whole time, when I'd kind of moved on to running teams and then to running Blackjack Apprenticeship. And so she's been doing this for a lot longer and is networked with people that have been doing this for, close to 20 years. And I just asked her about this because, she's networked with professional poker players. Some of this, it even has to do with like losses. Well, poker players, they have losing years fairly regularly, depending on if they're just playing tournaments or whatever. I remember talking to Andy Block, who was a part of early MIT blackjack teams, and he was a poker player for a while. And he's like, oh yeah, I've had a losing year this year and last year, but then I won this tournament the year before that. And like between that and sponsorships, I make money. But anyway, all that to say, she's networked with all sorts of professional gamblers. And a few things she said, she sent me an email with her thoughts, which I thought was really cool of her. She said, values, when the only way to keep score in life is money, it makes everything else unexciting. And so I think, it can impact your mental health if your only value in life is money. She talked about, I'll try to summarize it, but if you're gambling for a living, advantage player, whatever you want to call it, like the only other people that really understand are other gamblers. And so then that's who you have to talk to or to keep it to yourself. So I'll circle back around to that. the game, she said, the game within the game makes you view life as one big con. And I don't know if you felt that. We started like, how do we game Chipotle? You know, we had like our hack for how, oh yeah, you asked for extra beans and double rice. And then you're like getting this massive burrito for, whatever, $8. And then you split it up and it feeds the whole family. Or we had these weird hacks for that stuff. It's like, at some point, not all of life is a con.
I agree. That's great. I love that.
Oh my gosh, we had all these things. And I looked back, it was like, yeah, there was some fun in it. And some of it was like, wow, are we this cheap? Or is it just that we have to advantage play everything in life? Another, she said, it's hard to relate to the outside world, that when you've been a pro for long enough, like how do you relate to your friends' mundane 9 to 5, kind of boring existence when you're living this? And that can create isolation. And then the last one she said is gamblers often have a monetary goal and that's it. So there's total tunnel vision. And you could spend years working to this one goal. And then either you don't hit it or you hit it, but she says you blink and you spent several years, a decade of your life isolated. It makes it much harder to acclimate to everyday life if you even want to. So I thought that was really helpful from her. And, I know I've been talking for a long time, but I want to share my thoughts too, which is like really the big 3 things I think can impact a card carrier's mental health are losing, backoffs, and loneliness are the 3, like losing. And I was trying to think, there's professional athletes that, maybe they never in their entire, they eke out this baseball career for several seasons, but never get above like a 230 batting average. Like that's got to be just tough, or professional poker players, that lose, like card carriers lose almost as much or as long of streaks as winning players. The backoffs, the rejection, the like, great, now I've got to move on again, the loneliness. I think the danger signs are probably just how you're feeling. And like you said, how you're acting in general. If you're isolating yourself, if you're finding yourself angry or depressed, or like you said, solely focused on work, that workaholism thing. And I think the big one, it goes back to what you said earlier, which is like, can you step back and analyze if this is getting in the way of the other goals in your life? And have, like you did, have the courage to say, this is getting in the way. I think you and I are similar, that we tend to see card carrying as a tool, like it's a tool that can potentially help you further, the other more important things in your life. And if it does, I think that's great. But if it doesn't, put the tool on the shelf, maybe forever, maybe for a short period of time, who knows? But I think people can kind of get stuck in a rut and say, this is what I set out to do. This is the only thing I can do, or, I don't want to quit my AP career, not at an all-time high, which is going to be hard to do, I
mean, to me, what the conversation that kind of a person has to have with himself is, look what I accomplished learning how to count cards and doing this AP life. I can do anything I set my mind to, as opposed to, look what's being taken away from me or whatever. It's like that. It goes back to that internal dialogue. It's like how you position it in your mind. So to me, card counting, I mean, I'm not like a cocky person. I'm like pretty humble, although I've had this, business for, 2 decades and we do great. And, I'm super thankful. And, I always hate talking about that because it's like, my life's not perfect. I got problems just like everybody else. But it's kind of like card counting was like, oh, I did it. This is like a feather in my cap. This gives me more confidence to go do more things in life. Because look at what I learned from scratch. And wow, I'm writing and people are resonating on the forum with what I'm writing. And somebody, invested 50 grand in me. And I got to travel all around and generated EV and some AV. And so if anything, it should be like a game changer where it's like, I can do anything I want to do, not like this is the only thing I can do.
Yeah.
But I think it's really easy to get hooked on, well, this is the only way I can make $100 an hour.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets dangerous.
And I think if you decide like, okay, this is the best option for me, it really, you have to understand that these extrinsic values don't provide happiness. So, this goes back to that book Tribe that we both read and really enjoyed. And when I read that, I was, there's these studies and that what was it? It was oh, that's right. They did this survey. I wrote this down and I thought it was really interesting. They did a survey of more than 6,000 lawyers and found that conventional success had zero correlation with their levels of happiness and well-being. And if you're pursuing AP just for the money and you think that's going to make you happy, like it's going to fall short.
Yep.
But if we use the work we do, to live these holistic lives and pursue something more meaningful, connection with others, then, the money helps us reach that goal rather than the money being the goal. And it was cool to hear, you say that and RX Gamble say that. And, cause that's what I was thinking also. I was thinking about the people that I admire in the AP world that have had sustained careers at card counting or advantage play. And for those people, the advantage play isn't the goal of their life. Like you have to do it to a level of excellence to do it. But those people they're grounded on something outside of advantage play. Maybe it's family, or maybe it's, friendship, or maybe it's music, maybe it's their faith, whatever. But, if you're solely grounded in advantage play, it's going to be really isolating. And I think you are going to realize like, oh, wow, I remember a guy saying like, oh, well, it's all just scorekeeping. And I was like, really? I was saying like, why are you still doing this after all these years and all this money you've made? He's like, well, this is how we keep score. It's like, really? That's kind of sad to me. But, if you can do advantage play in a way that helps you pursue those other goals, I think you're going to be a lot happier. And going back to I think the last thing I was thinking of is the isolation thing. And that book Tribe talked a lot about this because it talked about survivors of wars or epidemics. And what they found is that a lot of them were happier during wartime or during the epidemic. This was the quote I pulled out. It says, what people miss presumably isn't danger or loss, but the unity of these things the unity that these things often engender. There's obvious stresses on a person in a group, but there may be even greater stresses on a person in isolation. So during disasters, there's a net gain in well-being. And so kind of the takeaway is like, man, we're made to be on a mission, like to pursue something and to do that in community. And we have this really individualistic Western world. And the APs that I've seen that are isolated, man, it more often than not, it doesn't feel like they end up in a better place 5-10 years down the road. And one of the other interesting things they found in this book was that people that came back from war, they had a way lower PTSD, or even like not measurable PTSD, if when they came back, they had mission and community. Like they got plugged back in, they had a purpose. Because what would happen is people come back, to the US from war and have nothing to do, not even jobs. And back at the war, they had something that they were doing. And so, I was thinking about that for card counters, and that's like, what's the thing grounding you, and who are the people, that can hear your stories. That was one of the things they said, like, man, these veterans that come back, they need people that can hear their story, the good, the bad, the ugly, like all of it. So as an AP, as far as this mental health thing, like you don't want to be isolated. You need community. I think both inside and outside the AP world, you need the people that you could tell the story about that awful loss, and they're not going to be like, oh, I think you have a gambling problem. Like they understand it and they can hear it and be like, dude, that sucks. Like empathy is so healing.
Yep.
But then maybe some people outside the AP world, so that your whole life isn't talking about like generating that next dollar of EV or whatever.
Well, I feel like, if you're going to play, if you play blackjack in a city that has like a really good art museum, go to the art museum.
Hell yeah.
It's like do something. Here's what an opportunity traveling the country, and you're not even seeing the country. Why not go take in some of the local flavor, or if you're in the South and there's killer barbecue, or there's a whiskey tour, or whatever your thing is, right? It could be the Louisville. I don't know if there's any casinos in Louisville, but you could go to the Louisville Bat. There is. Yeah. Okay. You can go to the Louisville Bat manufacturing plant. It's like, go do something outside of Card County because it's enriching. And you're kind of missing this chance. You don't have to be that person. So
I remember really early on, like one of the first blackjack trips I went on, it was me and my first two, it was our 3-man team. And we went up to Vancouver, BC, and they had pretty decent games back then. And we played like all day for 2 days. And on the way back, we went to a water slide place. We put our bankroll in like the little locker thing.
Oh my God.
And we have the key on our wrist or whatever. And we're like going down water slides, a couple, like 3 24-year-old dudes just doing some water slides. Cause it was like, you got to do have some other experiences, go see some national parks or whatever it is.
Totally.
So have community inside, outside of AP world and some things that ground you outside of this job. And the last thing I'd say is, diet, exercise, sleep. Like I think I said this recently, but reading Burning Down the Tables, the last third of the book is like his supplements and sleep schedule and showering schedule. And I was like, what a weirdo. And now that I'm, in my 40s, I'm like, he was talking about how to have a sustained career. You can't like do this off of adrenaline and, energy drinks long-term, or you're going to be like super unhealthy.
To that point, if I was going away for a weekend on a trip, it was like, I have to stay up as many hours as I possibly can because I only have the weekend or a long weekend to get in these hours. And then I'm back to the regular rigmarole, So that's not the way to do it because, as you said, at some point the adrenaline dies down and your immune system goes to crap. And, really, if you want to be healthy, diet and exercise. It is so simple, but it's true. And I'm saying this not to be annoying because nobody wants to hear it, but it's really true. And it's very, very hard if you're on the road. Like you have to proactively say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and get on the treadmill, or I'm not, I'm going to skip, the Happy Meal or, whatever, the burger, and I'm going to get a salad and be proactive in those ways. So they're all connected.
With some of these, guys that are playing full-time right now, they're getting Oculus. There are some games that you can do in your hotel room that you are going to get your heart rate. Like I'm sweating my face off after 3 minutes of like the Oculus boxing game.
Wow.
So man, if you have 15 minutes, you can like really get some exercise and you don't have to go find a gym or whatever. I thought that was a kind of a cool pro tip. But one other thing I'll add to that is I listened to this book a while ago called Digital Minimalism. And he talks about like our we didn't evolve to have 2-dimensional rest, like looking at a screen. We're made for 3-dimensional rest. And that like 3-dimensional rest is like you're actually using your hands for something. So it could be like a puzzle or playing a game. It could be woodworking. It could be playing a musical instrument. Those things actually have been proven to actually produce more rest to your body than like sitting and scrolling on a phone or watching, binge watching TV shows. And it's like, I like, watching a TV show as much as the next guy, but you're not going to get the same kind of rest. So I'd encourage people to find some area, some way in life they have some 3-dimensional rest. The last thing I'd say is counseling. If you're finding that you're angry or depressed or just like, in a rut, counseling has had a profound impact on myself and my wife. So there's
me too.
A lot of my thoughts and GreaseMonkey's thoughts and some of RX Gamble's thoughts on like pursuing mental health, which, this could have been its own whole podcast. Sassy Red and I did a podcast about some of this stuff too. So Bill can go back and listen to that. So, Sassy Red asks, what was your best day? Not necessarily best money, but best day as an AP, and what was your worst? So maybe start with your worst, and then tell us about your best, and then I'll do the same.
Okay. I mean, I think the worst for me in terms of like emotionally how I felt was, I mean, I go on this trip with Johnny 2332. We're up big in the bankroll. We're close to closing the bankroll. It's a big goal for both of us. We're super pumped. And it's regardless of what I write about, like how mentally we should be approaching these things. Just like dropping like $6 or $7 grand in like a 4 or 5 hour period after a 5-hour car ride was just brutal. I mean, that felt really bad. And then to top it off, we were in wherever we were. I guess it must have been like somewhere near San Diego. It was the same night as the Marines, like they have like the Marines have like this big party every year to celebrate like the founding of the Marines or something like that. And we had just figured that we'd get comped a hotel room, at one of these places. And because, we're going up to like 2 by 250 and, we think we're rock stars. And there's like literally no hotels in like within like, 50 or 60 miles. I mean, it just sucked. And I mean, I think we ended up finding a place. The only place that we could find, it was like $250, and you're just thinking, okay, how much EV is that between the two of us split? And yeah, I mean, so the whole trip was fun and I embraced the moment, but it felt like a low point at the time. But as I said, it's like, hey, you kind of signed up for the high points and the low points.
Yeah.
And that's, you got to embrace all of it, but it hurt at the time, it's like a baseball bat to the shins.
What about your best?
Oh, well, the best is probably a trip that I was on with Sassy Red and Johnny 2332. And, for like 2 days, we just kind of tore up Las Vegas and, ate well and laughed and played. And it's not necessarily that there was like one story, although some of it is captured in a little post that I did, years ago on the forum. So somebody should go find it and read it. But it was just a magical weekend of friendship and camaraderie and winning a lot of money, which felt really good too, right? Even though I know that's completely anathema to what I just said before, which is like, don't get excited about your wins and don't get excited about your losses. Stay focused on EV. But yeah, it does feel really good when you win a whole bunch of money. And, to feel like we had one up on all of Las Vegas for a weekend was a great feeling, and that was really special. I mean, I'll remember that the rest of my life.
That's awesome. Maybe we could put a link to that in the show notes. So I was thinking about this. Worst day. A couple came to mind. I did a family road trip. My wife and I, we had 4 kids in the minivan. We went down to San Diego and back to Seattle. And the first day, in I think one shoe, I dropped 10 grand and got backed off. And then I spent the whole rest of the road trip, and our team was on a losing streak. And I really wanted to help. I didn't play a lot at this point, but I wanted to, really help dig us out, get some hours in, generate some EV, and spent the rest of the trip playing, another probably 40 hours and I was in the positive, after all these hours, back offs, high limits, I'm in the positive and feeling good about the trip. We make one last stop in Southern Washington, go in there and drop 10 grand. and it was just like, it just felt like the whole bankroll, it's like this microcosm of the whole bankroll where it's like, one step forward, 2 steps back. And it was hard because, we knew it was a way to combine family and work. And we had a lot of good times on the trip, but man, to get that loss right at the end was a punch to the gut. Another it was more running the team, but there was a time at which I had told a player that we're going to have to let him go, that it was a combination of factors. But when I told him that he wasn't going to be staying on the team, he informed me that his losses were larger than he had told us, and he didn't want the team to feel bad, and he figured it would turn around, and he'd just add those losses when he'd had some wins, and so to his spreadsheet, so that it didn't look so bad. But now that I was saying, hey, we got to get the rest of your money, instead of having 50,000, he had like 15,000. And then to make things worse, when he said, okay, mistake I made is I should have already been prepared to have the money picked up right then. But he said, okay, well, if you don't mind just waiting through the weekend so I could tell my family and close friends before you tell the team. And I said, sure, not a big deal. Well, he went out and tried to win back the money that he had lost with the remaining bankroll money. And of course, you know what happened. He lost more. And that the thing that sucked about that was the additional money he lost. I'd already fired him. That wasn't really like his money to be playing with at that point. And so I personally covered it. I didn't feel like investors signed up to have someone play after he'd been fired. And the cool thing is, end of the story, the guy paid me back like the money they basically gambled with after being fired. But that was a rough day. That was like just a really rough, because care about the guy. He was a friend. That was really hard. That's
brutal.
It was brutal. I don't think I've ever shared that story, but yeah, that was, man, that was kind of like around the point where I'm like, you know what? I think where I'm at with all these kids, and I think I need to find something. The Blackjack Apprenticeship stuff was, I could really focus on it, and it wasn't so emotionally draining at that point. It's like, how do I split my time between running this team and kids, and working on Blackjack Apprenticeship? So I was like, you know what? Not too long after that, I'm like, I'm just all in with Blackjack Apprenticeship. Best, just kind of similar to yours, a trip with two of the early teammates, Jeff, and I call him Sammy in the book. And then like a high school friend, we're still good friends. His name's John. And the four of us, we went to Arizona, and we played for 4 days, and we were just winning, but it was like constant little practical jokes and like lighthearted stuff, and cramming into this tiny rental car, driving all over the place and splitting up and doing some team play. And just one of those, like, this is what I signed up for, traveling around with friends, beating these casinos, getting backed off, driving 4 hours to the next place, beating them. And it was a lot of fun. Also, first trip with Loudon Often, which was maybe 3 years ago. So he'd been on the team. I'd never done a trip with him. And then we do this trip together a few years ago, and he's a slave driver. He's like, we got to get in more hours. But we were having a blast. It had been a while since he and I'd played, and to do that together was a lot of fun, kind of that camaraderie thing. So those are what come to mind. Thanks for asking, Sassy Red. Next question comes from Scott Chow. And so we got two left. This one's pretty deep. He says, is it possible to make the world a better place amidst full-time AP play? He says philanthropy, reducing carbon emissions, community work, etc. What do you think about this?
I think you always have an opportunity, regardless of what you're doing, to make the world a better place. I mean, how we treat people. You were talking about empathy. I would add kindness.
Yeah.
Kindness and empathy can be exhibited regardless of what you're doing. And so when we exhibit those traits, we are making the world a better place. It might not be, it's not like feeding 10,000 children that aren't eating, but I'll tell you, I'm not doing that right now anyways. Although I'm generating wealth for songwriters and artists and whatever, and there's a multiplier effect that that goes on there. But all of our actions. I mean, it's funny. I feel like the Dalai Lama here. I don't know, but I think the answer is yes, because how we treat people affects the world, and that branches out. There was a time that I considered, okay, I'm going to donate 10% of my winnings, because that feels right. But I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And because my wife wanted a new laptop. So I guess I made the world a better place by employing more people that make laptops and design software. But I don't know. There's on the forum, there's been this debate about, are you adding value to the world by being a card counter? And I would say that to some degree, if you're just specifically talking about counting cards, like, I don't know how much that contributes to the world. But if we're talking about holistically life and how we interact with people and how we engage with people, then I think you can build that into life no matter what you do. I would say that if you feel like you're not contributing to make the world a better place, then you can find some additional ways to do that. I happen to know Scott loves his family dearly, and I think he's making the world a better place by spending time with his wife and kids and teaching them how to have a strong moral compass. And that has nothing to do with card counting. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think if we go back to this theme of community, which is kind of turning into the theme of the podcast here, and if we are talking about alignment in our life, well, even outside of card counting, we can carve out the time to donate time to sheltering those who need shelter or feeding those that are hungry or whatever. So I don't know if card counting specifically does it, but it enables you to have more free time to pursue those things outside of card counting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I at the end of the day, card counting is a hack. Advantage play is a hack. It's finding a loophole. I've used the analogy before. It's like extreme couponing, like if does extreme couponing make the world a better place? In and of itself, it's the same answer. Like, no, except for how you treat the people while you're doing this activity. Like if you're treating the coworkers or the other customers with kindness and empathy, then that does something. But beyond it's like, well, why are you doing the extreme couponing? It's for how it plays into the bigger picture. And caring for others is really important to me and my wife, and we're trying to teach that to our kids. And some of that's philanthropy, some of it's community work or community building or things like that. But it's really just how you're gonna use your whole life.
And here's something tangentially related that drives me nuts on the forum. People will say, I'm doing this because I want to take down the casino. No, you're not. You're doing it because you love it. I did it because I loved it. Like, let's not mix these, higher moral ground. You're doing it because you love it. And I just think we should just call it that.
If you just want to take down the casinos, then get enough people in your area to vote to close casinos in your city, Right. But otherwise, be honest. And some of the fun is, being David versus Goliath, but that's not all. That's not the only reason you're doing it. Right. Okay. Here's our last question. This comes from Small Town Guy. He says, I think it's important for you to give us 3 of your all-time favorite songs. It could include, but doesn't have to be limited to Lionel Richie.
Okay, yeah. And I do love Lionel Richie and I love the Commodores, but he doesn't make my top 3. But because if you saw my 5 from the forum posts, I made some kind of Lionel Richie joke in the thing. So that's where that came from. It's not like I'm obsessed with Lionel Richie and I get off the podcast and immediately put on Lionel Richie music. And so I would say some of these songs were influential in terms of songwriting or learning about music, and some of them are just great songs because I was a teenager. Mozart's Requiem is by far, if I could only pick one piece of music to listen to, it'd probably be that. Not only is it so beautiful, it's orchestral and the choral arrangements, but the story behind it is so fascinating because Mozart wrote it on his deathbed. He knew he was dying, right? And Requiem is music for death. And so he knew he was dying, and he's writing it. And then he dies before he finishes it. And the guy that finishes it is his arch nemesis. So what?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just how rich is that, you know? So Mozart's Requiem is a great one. Yesterday by the Beatles. In some ways it's so simple, and then those string arrangements done by George Martin are so beautiful. And anybody can listen to that song, and even if you didn't know the title, you would know through listening to it that it's called Yesterday. And everybody, even when my kids were 7 years old, I would play it for them, and they had this understanding of what it was about, or they knew it was sad, or there's just something there's something about that song that seems to resonate and connect, and there's that lightning in the bottle. So that would be my second one. And then the third one would be Plush by Stone Temple Pilots. Because that song just rocks. I can sing it and it sounds great, or I used to be able to sing it and it sounded great. Now not so much anymore. And it just holds a special place because I used to see Stone Temple Pilots live quite a bit when I was growing up. And it's that special connection when you're an adolescent. And all of your emotions are heightened. And then there's this great song, and you're in love with a girl, and they're at the concert with you, and and all of that magic. That song for me has always been like kind of one of those, I can't get out of the car until it's finished playing kind of a thing.
That's awesome. Going back to the Beatles, I've never thought of myself as a big Beatles fan, but a number of years ago, my brother and I think I got comped tickets to Love, which is the Cirque du Soleil show. In Vegas. And it's all done to Beatles songs. And, this song's playing and there's people doing acrobatics to it. I'm like, I love this song. And then the next song would play. I'd be like, I love this song. And then, you get through the hour-long thing of all Beatles songs. Maybe I actually am a bigger Beatles fan than I realized.
You're a secret Beatles fan. I mean, it'd be way cooler to say that Radiohead is, who shaped my musical career or whatever. but it's not. It probably started with the Beatles and watching. There used to be this show on TV called The Late Late Show with Bob Costas. I'm like really dating myself now. And he had Paul McCartney on for like a week. And I happened to be like, I was probably like in 9th grade when this happened, or 8th grade. And I stayed up really, really late. Probably because I was mad at my parents or my mom and my stepdad or whatever. And then I watched it, and it's the first time I'd seen that footage of like everybody at the airport waiting for the Beatles airplane to land, and everybody screaming. And I thought, oh my God, what is this? And then it kind of went down this journey, of a lifelong, love of the Beatles.
That's awesome. Well, I won't bore people with my musical tastes because it's probably a little obscure, but I will say this. I will belt out Bohemian Rhapsody every time it's on. And you know what? All my kids know it too. Like my 5-year-old will be singing it. So kudos to my wife, Grace, for, teaching our kids some classic songs. Okay. That's our 5 for 5, but I just wanted to, as we end this, any final thoughts or advice you'd give any active or aspiring card counters or advantage players out there?
Sure. It costs time to learn this, but it's even costlier not to learn, because you will guarantee lose all your money in the long run if you have a negative EV gain. So you have to put in the time, and you have to aspire to be as perfect as humanly possible. And we're not all perfect. If you read a lot of my forum posts, I'm the first to point a finger at myself at where I've messed up. And there's no shame in making mistakes. We learn from our mistakes, right? So, but having said that, you must commit to excellence for every facet of this game. And I'm not just talking about the mechanics of learning how to count, but you certainly need that first. But everything, that else that goes along with it, without kind of like sounding like cocky or, go read this or go read that. Like, I do feel like I have contributed an enormous amount of time for like a body of work on Blackjack Apprenticeship. And I know that it's positively affected a lot of people because I get these private DMs and people reaching out, or they've told me in person. And so I think if you're relatively new, I would go back and do a search for some of the things that I've written. I would also look, not just me, quite frankly. I mean, the JC Note's written some amazing things, and Sassy Red has written some amazing things, and Nubs 1983 has written some amazing things. And it's no secret to me that about why these people have been successful in AP life, ping pong as well. I mean, there's a whole bunch. It's like, it's almost a bad idea to mention them because I don't want to leave somebody else, out that then thinks, oh God, well, how come he didn't mention me? Or, but there are some really, really, really powerful lessons on the forum. And I think to go back and dig really, really deep into those posts is the best way to get up the learning curve. You do not want to blow your wad before you are up high on the learning curve. Because what's going to happen is you're going to understand card counting, but you're going to get backed off, and you're not going to understand maybe some of the fundamental reasons that backoffs happen. Or you're going to understand card counting, but you're not going to understand the relationship between bet spreads and NO and risk of ruin. And you're going to lose your money because you're doing everything right, but you're doing it the wrong way. Right. So if you're new, go seek out some of these people on the forum that you're resonating with and read everything that they've written. And if you do, you have a much higher probability of being successful with this. And lastly, I would say the most important thing that I ever wrote on the forum is that being an AP doesn't just take discipline. It is a discipline in itself. And rather than explaining maybe what that means, if you're new on the site, why not think about that a little bit and then start a forum post on it and tell the community, well, what does this mean to me? And what does it mean to you? Because what I'm trying to do is give you an opportunity to get active in the community if you're not active in the community, because the community will help you so greatly. So what does it mean that being an AP doesn't just take discipline, but it is a discipline? Go tell me your answer.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for the discussion that's going to follow from this. Thanks for taking so much time to share your story, but also talk about these deeper things, because at the end of the day, advantage play comes and goes. For most people, it's not going to be what they do. And I kind of hope it's not what defines people. But I want people's lives to be meaningful. And so it's cool talking about these deeper things, and hopefully people aren't bored listening to us wax eloquently about all this stuff. So thanks again for taking the time and for the contributions you've made on the site over the years.
My pleasure. And thanks for having me.
I hope you guys enjoyed part 2 of my podcast interview with BJA member GreaseMonkey. If you want to reach out to him, you can find him on the BJA forum. And if you don't have access to the BJA forum, you're missing out. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you all next time.